one of glazing would be only bisqueware can be glazed. So that is important because if you glaze something that has not been fired yet, it will explode in the firing. Okay? If you glaze something that has not been fired yet and we high fire it, it will explode. I actually have an example. Somebody else's piece in the kiln was glazed and only greenware. It got fired, it exploded, the pieces fell into this bowl and are now in there forever. You see that? They fell in and they stuck. Because you know the glaze in the firing will melt, and then when the glaze cools, it's fused to everything that it's touching. So it fused to all those pieces that fell in, and they're in there forever. You can feel it later if you want. It's stuck. Done. You see it on the video. Okay, so that's important. Don't ruin other people's projects. So that's the first one. Second one, to stir the glaze thoroughly. I want you to know why you do these golden rules, okay? So stirring the glaze thoroughly is your number 2. And the reason for that is that all the glaze ingredients are dry, like powder ingredients mixed with water. So what do you think happens after they sit there for a while? Yeah, they separate and they settle, and then they're not mixed together. Sorry, these lids are so good. They work so well. It makes it really hard to get. Okay, so you can see, you guys look, you see how this is like all water at the top? It's kind of yellowy water. The color of the water will just depend on the glaze color. Okay, so I'm going to use a stir stick to stir this up. If you guys come to class, which you guys are the first class on A-days, so I don't have a class in here first period, so sometimes the glaze will be pretty settled. So you have to mix it up quite a lot. So mix the glaze really, really well so you get all of those ingredients stirred up into the water. Okay? So that's your second one. Third one is not having glaze on the bottom or a 1/4 inch up the side at the bottom. Okay? So no glaze on the bottom or a 1/4 inch up the side at the bottom. So you can see this bowl that I showed you before, how there's that little rim at the bottom with no glaze on the side. Does anybody have any idea why?
It'll stick.
Right, because the glaze we know melts. It will drip down and what? Stick to the shelf inside the kiln. So we leave that little 1/4 inch buffer so that the glaze will not stick to the shelf by accident, because it will run. The glaze will run. Some glazes run more than other glazes. Some glazes hardly run at all. Some glazes run a lot. So you just leave that 1/4 inch to make sure you're covered. Okay. Then the fourth one, I'm only going to give you 4. The fourth one, make sure you have glaze the right thickness. Make sure you have glaze the right thickness. The right thickness on your piece. If you have glaze too thin, the color will not be right, and it will be kind of rough and matte. Well, some glazes are matte, but it'll be rough and thin, okay? If you have it too thick, a number of things can happen if it's too thick. Number 1, if it's thicker, it will run. Definitely run. And it can run off the piece even if you leave that 1/4 inch, okay, if it's too thick. It can also do a defect called crazing, where the glaze just kind of separates and doesn't stick in a lot of places. It can bubble. You can have lots of problems with it, okay? So you want it at the ideal thickness. So when you stir up the glaze, you can kind of look, and I'll tell you the appropriate thickness for the glaze should be about like whole milk. Okay, that's what it should look like when you have it all stirred up. If you stir it up and it looks thicker than that, maybe come get me and I'll come look at it. Because sometimes people leave the lid off the glaze, and what happens when the lid is left off? Water evaporates, right? And so then it's thicker than it should be. Okay, so I don't know when this one was stirred up last. I have to be honest, it's been a long time. Okay, so when you stir up, look at the stick. See the bottom of the stick? Okay, that means I still have to stir it a lot. So this one might take like a long time to stir. Can you guys see that from far away? You want to keep stirring till all of that is like not on the stick anymore. It's all mixed in. Okay, so that's why I've been stirring this while I'm talking to you, to try to get it closer, but it might take a little longer. Okay, so that's your golden rules. Now, I want you to write down the 2 purposes of glaze that you need to know. 2 purposes of glaze. The first one is the functional purpose of glaze. The functional purpose of glaze. So what is the functional purpose? What is the function of glaze? Okay, making it food safe so you can drink out of it is what he said. So you make the surface of the clay food safe, or that you can put food in it and eat out of it and feel good about it. Okay, so making it sanitary or food safe because it puts that coat of glass over the top of it. Okay, and then the other is the aesthetic purpose. So what would the aesthetic purpose mean? What do you think that means, the aesthetic purpose? To make it look good, right? So that's the other purpose. So those are your 2 reasons we use glaze. So on your face jar, we didn't glaze them, but you used the slip to decorate them. So you made them, you utilized the function or the aesthetic purpose for that. But we're not using those for like food, so we didn't glaze them. Okay, that is going to need to be stirred up even more and more and more. Yes. Okay. So your steps of glazing. Step 1. Look at the tiles that are in the glaze room for what the color will look like. Okay, so there are tiles in there just like there were with the slips. So look at that, because the glaze in the bucket looks way different than it will after it gets fired. The slips looked a little different, but these look way different. Okay, so don't look at the bucket and be like, oh, that's gray. Well, that's not the color I want. This isn't gray. This is peacock. Peacock is like a dark blue color. Okay, so just make sure you're paying attention to the tile, not to what the glaze looks like in the bucket. Go ahead. We need that stirred up really well. And we'll leave this one too. Okay, then you're going to, of course, stir it up really well. Then I'm going to take a damp sponge, okay, like a damp, just wrung it out, and I'm going to clean off my piece with the damp sponge. Okay, just like